experiencing in real time entire family structures collapsing, entire families being wiped off the civil registry, having to tell a father or a mother that their entire family, their lifelong partner, and all of their children have just been killed, and you weren't able to resuscitate them, is something that was very difficult to experience, and something that I hope I never have to experience again.
That was pediatric intensive care doctor Tanya Haj Hassan, who is part of an international team of doctors who recently treated patients at Al-Aqsa hospital in central Gaza. What she and her colleagues witnessed was worse than what they had expected. They knew things were bad, they just didn't know how bad. And as we know, after nearly 6 months of war, Gaza's health sector has been absolutely decimated. Roughly a dozen of Gaza's 36 hospitals are only partially functioning. The rest have either shut down completely or are barely functioning after they ran out of fuel and medicine, were surrounded and raided by Israeli troops, or were damaged in fighting. That leaves hospitals such as Al-Aqsa caring for an overwhelming number of patients with limited supplies and staff. Before the war, the hospital had a capacity of around 160 beds, according to the World Health Organization. Now, there are some 800 patients, yet many of the hospital's 120 staff members are no longer able to come to work. The majority of its intensive care unit beds are occupied by children, including infants wrapped in bandages and wearing oxygen masks. Haj Hassan and her team recounted some of the most harrowing scenes of young children and their families enduring gruesome injuries and often death. The Associated Press reports that one toddler died from a brain injury caused by an Israeli strike that fractured his skull. His cousin, an infant, is still fighting for her life with part of her face blown off by the same strike. Tanya joined Amy Goodman on Democracy Now! And described one particularly devastating story of a young child that she treated.
It was a very common occurrence to have a child that we were resuscitating and not know if any of their family were alive, or be told that their family had been killed, or be told that that other woman that we're resuscitating simultaneously on the floor is the child's mother. I remember one incident where we received a young boy who the side of his face had been blown off. And we were providing care for him while providing care for his sister in the adjacent bed. His sister had 96% of her body burned. Their parents and all of their other siblings had been killed in the same attack. And he kept asking for his family, and he had a distant cousin who was at his bedside who kept saying, they're fine, they're injured, they're gonna be fine. And he kept saying, where's my sister? He could see the patient next to him. He just couldn't recognize her because she was so badly burned, but that was his sister.
She also said after a recent shift, quote, I spend most of my time here resuscitating children. What does that tell you about every other hospital in the Gaza Strip? Part of the challenge in getting accurate information about what's going on in Gaza, especially in the past few months, has been the refusal to allow journalists to enter and report on the ground. That, in addition to more than 100 reporters getting killed, masks the true extent of the devastation Palestinians are suffering. After weeks of not being able to get into Gaza, CNN's Clarissa Ward also joined Emirati medical volunteers at a field hospital where she was met with many of the same horrors these doctors described.
Even in that brief window, Gail, you really got a sense of the absolute horrors that have been taking place in Gaza. This hospital was filled with the youngest victims of this war, children who have been disfigured, who are in full body casts, who are covered in burns. According to the United Nations, some 2/3 of the deaths that have happened since Israel retaliated after the horrific October 7th attacks with this massive bombardment, 2/3 of the victims have been women and children. And we definitely saw that borne out in this hospital.
The doctors simply don't have the resources or the space to provide adequate care for these patients. And that lack of resources brings us right back to the debilitating shortage of aid Gaza is still experiencing. So take a look at this graph. The deficit between the volume of all supplies that would have entered the Gaza Strip if not for the war and what has actually been received has reached at least 500,000 tons of aid. The problem is not that Israel doesn't have the capacity to allow aid in. Israel's very large ports have enough capacity to meet Gaza's needs, according to Asaf Ashar, an Israeli-American maritime expert who estimated that Palestinian aid requirements might make up 2% of Israeli port capacity, just 2%. But as Israel continues to stifle aid going into Gaza and funding to UNRWA has been slashed, the United States has resorted to airdropping aid, which of course has its own deadly consequences.
With Gaza teetering on the edge of famine, aid agencies say only about a fifth of required supplies are coming in by land. So more aid is delivered like this. It is imprecise and at times proves deadly. Yesterday, Palestinian health authorities said 12 people had drowned trying to recover packages from the sea. Between the scattered boxes designed to save, people recovered from the sea. This man says he swam out 300 meters to get 2 boxes of food. Others didn't make it there and back.
So while getting a consistent stream of reliable reporting from Gaza is difficult and is increasingly difficult because of the conditions on the ground and the dwindling number of reporters on the ground, these are the kinds of images, these are the kinds of reports, these are the kinds of videos that Americans are seeing, the international community has been seeing themselves. And I believe this is the reason why there's been a growing number of Americans who went from supporting Israel's military actions in Gaza in the beginning to now either questioning it or full-blown rejecting it, rejecting Israel's narrative, rejecting what Israel is carrying out, and rejecting the notion that Israel's military, the IDF, is specifically going after Hamas militants. How can you make that argument when it's abundantly clear that there is growing starvation in Gaza and growing suffering and devastation in Gaza due to the destruction of those hospitals? That is collective punishment. That is why the UN Special Rapporteur recently made some statements about how she believes that what's being carried out in Gaza is plausibly a genocide. And Matt Miller, a spokesperson for the State Department, responded to that by essentially smearing her as some sort of anti-Semite. But I think anyone who has a heart would look at these images and watch these videos and see what's happening to innocent people in Gaza and come out with the same, aggressive criticisms. What did those kids do to deserve what they're going through right now? And why are we so willing, when I say we, I mean the American government, so willing to continue supplying Israel with the weaponry that has caused so much destruction in Gaza? I have no malice in my heart, no ill will in my heart toward Israel or the Israeli people, but I do have a great deal of rage growing within me in regard to the actions that are being carried out by Israel's far-right government. What they're doing is counterproductive for the people of Israel and obviously deadly and devastating for Palestinian civilians. And so I can't help but be critical in what I see happening. How could you not be? What I'm more worried about is that we still have a sizable portion of Americans who think what Israel is doing is totally fine. And I don't know if it's because they're in a media bubble where they're not seeing the same reports that we're seeing and sharing with you here on this show, or if it's just that they have a double standard in their mind in regard to human lives, where one group includes lives that are valuable and the other group not so valuable. It's just heartbreaking, and I want the death and destruction to stop. That's it. That's all I want. That's what a lot of Americans want. And to say that what's being carried out right now is justified, that it's just wrong. So we're gonna keep covering this story, and I'm gonna keep doing my best to stay calm as I do so, because I think getting this information out to the public in the clearest way possible is important. But that shame that I had expressed feeling as a result of what our government is supporting continues to grow within me, and I think it continues to grow within a lot of Americans who just don't support this and feel that there needs to be more done to rein in Netanyahu's far-right government. Unfortunately, there's a lot of talk from the Biden administration, but not a lot of action to use their leverage to rein Netanyahu and the IDF in.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.